Hello, you're listening to a podcast which is all about the Irish League. My name is Peter Cinnamon, and this week we're doing a league-wide vibe check. A bit like a half-term report card, except we call it the quarter-season catch-up. Each top-flight side season, so far, under the microscope. We'll not forget to include this weekend's games, shocks and all, on your latest weekly edition of Kick and Match. It's the usual cast of critters for the quarter-season catch-up. Make some noise, Ross Welsh.
Way.
I don't think he was going to be that excited coming onto the podcast. And somebody who's minorly excited, it is Joe McCallion.
Let's be honest, Peter, you dragged me here with the way Cliftonville are going this season.
Well, you had your chance last week to do it, and then other things got in the way. But here we are. I feel as though we've got a better view on all these teams as we try to judge, as we mark their report cards, one rotation around playing all of these teams. But before we get down to that, let's talk about the weekend's results briefly. Any ideas where we should start, Joe?
Yes, I'd love to go down to Shamrock if you don't mind.
Didn't expect this, Ross.
No, I certainly didn't expect it either. Deary me. I've had enough time where I'm over it now, but sure.
Is it the shock of the season?
By half time, no, it wasn't. By half time, it was abundantly clear what was brewing, but probably, without thinking too much, it is probably the shock of the season.
We are already in crisis mode with Linfield, and all it took was 90 minutes and a Bar Shelton top header, followed by a little poked goal by James Teelan. Meltdown for Linfield, jubilation for Portadown. Look how easy things can turn based on one matchup in this league.
Yeah, listen, that's the beauty of the league, isn't it? Tough night. I think it's more the straw that broke the camel's back in terms of the crisis at Linfield. I think it's almost been waiting for a result like this. As for the Ports, yeah, they're flying. They must be third, fourth in the table, are they?
You'd think it by some of the reactions. I'll tell you about a team who is fourth, and they are loving it. But before we get into that, you guys were at this game, and by all accounts, this was a slow start for Linfield, which then just went from bad to worse after they had a goal. And once Portadown took the lead, any confidence that Linfield had just seemed to filter away. They really they were shelled themselves in that second half.
Yeah, I actually thought the first 10 minutes we were very good, and we had the Ports on the back foot. Offord had a couple of chances, maybe should have scored, but after Jamie Mulgrew went off injured, everything was gone. It was completely void of any impetus or attacking threat. And yeah, once it went 1-0, it was only ever going that way. You probably could have left safe in the knowledge that we weren't going to win that game. It's a terrible performance, certainly the worst of the year, and probably the worst going back a good while, I've been trying to think.
Is it just rust? Because we've seen Larne struggle on their return after a wee break, Linfield lose, maybe the Crusaders' result isn't that much of a shock, but you could see that was not a team who were fighting fit, let's just say, or were prepared to take on opponents who were well up for the game. Like, it took a while for them to really get any sort of rhythm. Like, is that an excuse for a full-side team in Linfield?
No, absolutely not, because Healy came out and said in his interview that they've been playing 11v11 in training, and obviously that's not the same. You're not going to have the intensity, but like, they had 2 weeks without a match, and their job is to play football and like get better at football, and that's all they do in their working day. And it's as if they'd never met each other. Like, I could have went down and had a better game than some of them boys. Like, it was shocking. It wasn't even a bad day at the office. It was 5-yard passes weren't getting made. The shape, I don't even know what we were trying to do. I think it was a lot more than rust. And that Linfield team should still beat most teams in the league, but that was something more than rust.
Was the Healy words after the game, which has also grabbed a lot of attention, was that a positive for you as a fan? Because sometimes when managers do this, it actually frustrates the fan base because they're saying, we know, why didn't you stop this?
Yeah, like, it's a nice idea that he's come out and like chastised some of the players, which he hasn't really been known to do. But the way he was saying, like, I was gonna boo myself, like that's a load of rubbish because you've been sat there for an hour and a half watching it happen. Like, I'll boo you because you sat and did nothing about it. Like, it's almost as if he's looking around going, "Oh, this isn't going well. Somebody should sort this out." And it's like that's your job. That's literally your job to see that that's
So
not
much
going
is
well.
so much to fix this.
And
Oh.
his solution seemed to be every striker we have, I'm going to throw them on here. And I think that's what's ended up with the second goal, and that's obviously the killer blow. But yeah, nice idea to come and do it, but I think he's more pandering to his audience than actually being effective.
Joe, did Portdown get enough credit for this result? I know a lot of the focus has been how bad Linfield were, but I think Portdown perhaps maybe deserve a bit of the rub.
Yeah, to be honest, I think they do, and I can't believe that this is being considered a crisis from Linfield. Like, there's still 5 wins. Ross's head has gone straight into his hands there, so I'm sure
Like,
he'll.
if I've heard this once, I've heard it a million times.
You aren't having a crisis in a sense of like you are still fine. Portadown, look, they're a team that can do it to you. It's the Irish League. These results happen. Korean fans weren't saying this a couple of weeks ago when Bangor got a result on them. This is just the result of this league, and Portadown were just up for it. Yous, yous had your chances, you didn't take them. Portadown, on the other hand, absolutely did, and I do think they deserve credit. I don't think Portadown were anything special, but they did what they had to do.
They did what they had to do, and Fife played well. I thought Tatum was quite good, and they were reasonably solid at the back. I thought McCurry pulled off a couple of good saves towards the end, but wasn't really tested. But like, yeah, Portadown were fine as well. Like they deserved the win. I'm not saying that, but
After what I would imagine is a difficult couple of weeks where you lose pretty much the most of the backroom staff, for Niall Curry to bounce back and get that victory, he must have felt like he was 10 foot tall, and this perhaps now is a bit of a jumping off point. Was it just a situation where a team who isn't at the minute able to get results against the likes of Carrick or Bangor, but they can bring themselves up for a Linfield? It's hard to really guess what this tells us about a Portadown side who, at the minute, I still think is in that mush of teams that 11th could very much be their destiny. The Linfield thing probably stings for its fan base because all the other teams, well, the other top four sides that we are pinning them down as, they look like they don't have the same problem that Linfield have. They look like they are well connected, are able to break down teams, can score goals at will. And yes, we all remember the flurry of performances from Alfred at the very start of the season, but that already feels like a very long time ago.
that Joel Cooper goal was a sickener. Watching it in the highlights, I was like, I just thought, here's what you could have won.
This is the worst X doom scroll
Oh,
ever.
like, genuinely, I hadn't watched the goals, and then I thought, oh, I'll stick them on, and there there it was. I just thought, Jeepers, that's like exactly what would have broke Portadown open, and I would have went to 1-3 or 4 again. But he's no longer at the club, so that's fine. But yeah, as you were saying about Portadown getting up for the big teams, that's kind of been their whole shtick since they came back up. Good performances, and it's those teams around them where they have struggled. But looking at their run, Corey and Glenn's Lorne coming up, if they can string another few points together there, they'll be sitting very prettily in mid-table.
And if we're looking at this result, Joe, and go, where can Linfield go from here? They're probably looking at Coleraine and saying, well, that's where we want to go. Bounce back, take on a team who has, in Dungannon, built up a little bit ahead of steam themselves and just trounce them at home. This was Coleraine at their free flowing best, and somewhat exposed the fact that yes, Dungannon Swift has a nice togetherness, but when it comes to their defence, it is break not bend.
Yeah, and that's even if you go back to last season with Dungannon, they weren't exactly, you know, they would concede goals. They weren't always tight at the back, and that has just continued this season, which is obviously well documented. Their start to the league being very poor. it's the last thing I think Dungannon would have liked to get four put past them. I don't think they necessarily expected to go up to Coleraine and come away with the 3 points, but they were really turned over. I think Macquarie said they had a good sort of first 20 minutes, but I don't think they settled after that. And Coleraine really showed just how much quality they have this season.
We've got to give them a bit of credit early on here. This fella, O'Connor, this management business is pretty easy, eh? First game in the league, first points, only their fourth goal, and what a goal it was from Malone. What a free kick. That's the kind of quality, or that's what you need to go right for you when you're in the position that Glenavon were in, and still are very much.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when you're down around there, your set piece goals are obviously absolutely crucial. And if you've got someone like Jack Malone who can get over a free kick like that and get you goals, then happy days. They'll feel a lot better for it. Um, from what I saw, the performance looked a bit better as well. They were good value for the win. So maybe the start of some green shoots for Glenavon as well. But that's a bit of a skid character on now as well, barring that Portadown result not too long ago. But outside of that, that's not a great run there on.
I totally agree. The sniff test isn't particularly good there for Carrick, even if it was Stephen Baxter's 1,000th game in Irish League management. Congratulations to him, albeit the result didn't go his way. Result did go the way of Glentoran, 2-0 against Ballymena at home, themselves bouncing back from a defeat to Dungannon, which was again a loss off the back of a bit of a break from play.
Yeah, they've been absolutely brilliant this season so far. I don't think they'll be massively disappointed in the Korean loss, but it's a huge bounce back for them. It's exactly what they needed. And the best thing for them, I think, is that the fact they're not relying on one goal scorer. You've got the likes of Jenkins and Stewart and Hoban up front. All of them are just chipping in, and it's exactly what they haven't had for the last while.
A game I was at, Bangor Crusaders, I thought for either side, this could define how this March to Christmas could be, because I definitely think it's a mid to lower table kind of 6-pointer, and I wasn't quite sure really like how Bangor would take to it. Would a draw satisfy them here? Would perhaps Crusaders going back to a place where they actually won a game earlier on this season maybe showcase that they've had a break, that they've been able to reconvene and they can do it all over again? But you know what? I haven't seen the full 90 minutes. I thought Bangor were well worth the victory. It wasn't very pretty. It wasn't very well connected up, let's just say. But they dug in, and bar a brief patch where it all was starting to look like it was coming together off the back of half time for Crusaders, Bangor just bullied them off the ball, and it was a bit of a rough and tumble kind of affair to get the goal. I don't really know how much was it Morgan knew about the ball that hit him and went into the way of McGuinness, but if you're Lee Feeney, you're saying, well, they stuck on Stephen McGuinness a couple of seconds earlier and then he knocks it at the back of the net. I am great at management.
And he is a good manager. I do really rate him. He's got that Bangor team well drilled. It's never going to be the sexiest of football when you come up from the championship, but it doesn't need to be. And now they're sitting well above any stations they thought they were going to be sat in. The Crews defending for both goals is not great, especially the first one, but that's what it's all about. When you're scrapping for points, you have to just capitalise whenever chances like that fall your way.
Having watched the full game, I do have a lot to say when it comes to Crusaders, but we'll hold that back for the catch up, and then I'm sure you'll be happy enough here, Joe, that it is last and potentially least. Lauren go into solitude and never really get out of second or third gear. Barely sweat. 2-0 was ahead before you even knew it.
Yeah, there's not much more I can add to it, nor want to, but yeah, I just like it was kind of expected to be honest, and we'll come on to Cliftonville properly, but there's a lot going on at the moment, and it's nothing positive.
For Lauren themselves, I mean, this is kind of what they want, isn't it? It's ticking by quietly, and I'm still yet to see what their strongest 11 is that works week to week. And you can see perhaps that they're going to have a few more wobbles along the way. But Cliftonville look like probably one of the more easier games they've played in recent weeks.
Yeah, and it doesn't massively surprise me because in a similar way, we obviously don't really have our strongest team at all. But like when you think back to it, Rooney doesn't feel like it was this season. It's really impressive that Gary's managed to come in and settle, and they've just really kicked on. For Lauren, it's not something that I expected. I thought there might have been a wee bit of a hangover from it, but he hasn't really let it bother him at all.
It's clearly a bold move from those in charge at Lauren saying, we're going to give Gary the job properly now after what, two spells as interim. Um, it isn't a total shock because there didn't really seem to be anybody in the frame locally that they thought this is worth mixing it up. Gary had been a part of this expansive network of coaches for a while. He knows the club. And also, fun fact, I think Lauren would talk about it more based on this, but he's actually from Lauren as well. So and that obviously gives him a better connection with the club too.
From the town for the town and all that.
That's what
Perfect,
I've heard.
perfect. He's to be fair to him, he's been their best manager. Like when Rooney wasn't involved, they seemed a better outfit. Um,
Well, let's talk about this. You know, the Rooney thing came in, and like I would say, most people within the Irish League were hoping for, it didn't work out for a variety of reasons. For it never got off to the best start. People kind of questioned how he set his team out, and then just the whole drama of the end of last season. It didn't work out, so I just don't think Lauren were in the mood, especially because there's been a bit of change, been a bit of a rumbling as we saw the baton being passed from the Kenny Bruce era into this new Lauren era. A bit of stability is not a bad thing, is it? And so far, you base it on the audition that he's had this season. We'll talk about it again in a second, but very few feet have went wrong.
And that's shown in the fact that they've only conceded four. And that's one of the first things you need to do. Stop goals going in, and the points will come.
So here we are once again, quarter season catch up. One of the little gimmicks that I wheel out every year, usually around that time, where most teams have played 11 games, aka have played every other side once. It's an interesting point in the season because it's hard to really tell where the halfway point is. You think it's somewhat after Boxing Day, and probably is. But when it comes to the amount of games, you got cups thrown in and all the rest. But we now have seen teams have their moments drop off. We've seen moments of consistency. I think we've seen plenty of inconsistency. And we're at a point where we can somewhat establish where these teams are and perhaps guess where their destiny is going to be. And we have what we've seen two managers change so far in the top flight. So clearly teams know that they need to get their act into gear. And the way I'm going to do this is by going from the bottom to the top. And it wouldn't have mattered if they won 3 games in 3 days at Glenavon. They were going to be the first team we talk about here. We're going to grade all these teams with whatever letter you wish, as if we're little school teachers. A, B, C, D, U, whatever. And for Glenavon being last, having only scored 3 goals before this weekend, having not had a clean sheet until this weekend, not having a point until this weekend, we're on this historically bad run. You can say now with a new manager on board that you've got to be positive and wipe the slate clean. But the whole point of this task is to look back at the slate that they've established, and it's just horrendous. We've spent a couple of weeks on this podcast talking about how bad Glenavon have been and why and how they've got here. But simply, it's all ground now. But this start of the season within 11 games, they've played 12 now, is so bad that it might not be recoverable from.
yeah, which is shocking to say in the middle of October that you're already sort of ruling them out of anything. It has been terrible, especially compared to sort of my thinking anyway at the start of the year was Paddy McLaughlin could sort of get them going and sort of get them challenging seventh, eighth direction, but it has been terrible. And it's not even if you can say, oh, they've been unlucky. They have been rubbish and haven't deserved a point anywhere. They can't score a goal. They can't seem to create a chance to score a goal. It's been poor enough, but who knows? Maybe this is the start of something. But as you say, it's a massive task now to, especially automatic safety, but even a playoff is sort of looking a bit pie in the sky.
Yeah, like as you say there, Ross. One, they're not scoring goals; they're shipping them like it's no one's business as well. It's shocking how many goals are going in. And talking about trying to get the safety, the teams above them, I don't know, we'll come to them. The two that are closest, I don't think are going to stay there.
Well,
And
you're
then you're
hoping that, aren't
looking,
you? 'Cause one of them's yours.
not yet, so definitely hoping not. I'm touching wood all around me here. But yeah, like I don't see who they could possibly climb up to there, and it's tough to say at this point of the season.
It's 10 points off Crusaders having played 2 games more. 7 points off Crusaders having played 2 games more. They are 8 points off Cliftonville, ditto. Carrick Rangers, it's 10 points having played 2 games more. Dungannon, 12. Portadown, 12. You even look up the Ballymena. Like Bangor's the one. That's the anomaly. And even chatting to people there at Clandy they're just so delighted. I will get to them. But 15 points, and they were probably the favourites to go down. It just shows you how difficult it is. And what will be interesting is, because there's lots of these teams that they could catch, is that going to benefit them, or is that going to make it more difficult to try and claw their way back? Because there isn't going to be, or there could be, of course, as the next few weeks go by, but there isn't going to be like the whipping boys potentially that they can maybe they get points while somebody else drops like a stone. Um, it's hard to really suggest that realistically anything based on Saturday is suggesting that they've got anything massively to be hopeful around, because they've beat a team who themselves lost what 4 out of their last 5, and are themselves sinking like a stone. But even at that, 10 points difference. So
Well,
Even their goal difference already is worth a point because they're on minus 19 after 12 games, which is not good. I didn't even realize they had games out of hand on the teams around them as well, so it's even worse reading it. You're right in what you say. They almost do need a whipping boy. They need someone to just start taking hidings every week. And is that going to be Carrick with this run of form? I don't know. But even then, it's still a 10-point spin to get to them. They don't look like winning
this is
four
going to be a
games.
question I'll ask for weeks, and it's going to drive Glenavon fans mad, because it's probably one of those things where they're like, only we get that asked this question. But if they had lost against Carrick, was it all over?
oh, I think so. I mean, I'm struggling to sit here now and say it's not all over. So I think if it was a loss to Carrick, and that's the one that they'll have their eyes on, then
You see,
definitely.
because of that win, it isn't, because they could see victory and then get that. For example, even Crusaders, despite them having 2 more games in hand above them, it's only 4 points. So it's very quick, very, very sudden. Um, Again, we all know the issue with Glenavon. Signings weren't right. Team philosophy wasn't right. It didn't work as a side. Perhaps there's just no one or not enough players that were digging in. They've had a bit of bad luck as well in a couple of games, but name me a side in this division that isn't crying about something that happened in some games. So good times and bad times. Malone shows that they do have a bit of quality in there and fits the starts. They need to get Peter Campbell playing to top of his ability again, but there's more than just one positive from the Saturday. They did get a clean sheet as well. I think there's plenty to talk about when it comes to Carrick off that back of result. Like F feels like it's too high. Like it's almost a U, isn't it? But I'll give them an F because it was historically bad, and even like Twitter accounts from some other random countries across Europe were mocking them because they hadn't won a game. You can't give them anything but.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's an F. And if we were recording this last week, it would have been reset the year and everything. It's just not good.
Well, that still may be on the horizon. Obviously, it doesn't go from poor to good here. We slip up to 11th, and it's the Cruise. They do have 2 games to make up on the likes of Dungannon in 8th and Portadown in 7th. However, this is a side who has not really shown anything that resembles form so far this season. They're already struggling with injuries. The squad looks thin. It's a very youthful squad. And at this level, we've rarely seen that be a massive positive. Like, I think I counted on Saturday, out of the 18 players in the squad, 8 of them were teenagers. Only 3 of the starting 11 on Saturday were above the age of 23. Yeah, and that was O'Rourke, Tuffy, and I'm one other. It's if they all start clicking, they've outsmarted the league. But we expected a downturn. But is there little ringings of alarm bells starting to fester throughout the club? Because this is poor.
Yeah, I would say there probably is to a degree. The three of us sat here before the season started, and we were all a bit confused by the transfers that were done. And it was clear that Cadell's trying to sort of build up his own side and get rid of that sort of Baxter mentality that was there. So it was always going to be a poor season from him. I think we all predicted that, but not to this degree. Sitting where they are now, yes, they have games in hand, and I do think things will click. As I said there, I don't think they're going to stay down that low. But what is probably worrying is that defense again. Look, Fraser Bryden up front is scoring goals. He seems like an absolutely brilliant player for them. But there's a lot more work that's needed in that squad. I think they'll mainly be looking now. Probably where I predicted them around sort of eighth is ideally where Cadell would be aiming for now.
I think they're in a scrap. Ross, I don't know if you kind of agree. Until they get out of this 11th place, and even upwards where they've maybe got 4 or 5 points off 11th, they're going to be looking around them. And at the minute, that's everybody and nobody. Like, who do they want to win between a Carrick and a Portadown, a Dungannon against a Cliftonville? Like, it's you. Obviously, the answer is you got to focus on your own results, but they're in the mix.
100% they're in the mix. As long as they're in 11th, that's sort of who Glenavon are going to be aiming for. They don't look good at all. They're not the Crusaders of old that will frustrate you and make it difficult. They're young and naive and inexperienced. They don't make it hard at all. You can get at them. It's all the things.
Oh, you can get at them.
It's all the things
Absolutely
Crusaders
spot it.
aren't supposed to be, and that was kind of their whole thing. So when you take that out of it, and you take a talismanic manager like Stephen Baxter out of there, you are left with now the sum of their parts, which probably isn't a great football team at the minute. They seem to have goal scorers, but they've shipped 20 already, and it just looks a bit grim for them down there at the minute.
Dunlop, Bryden, Brooks, all exciting. I just don't know who is the one that's really grabbing the game by the scruff of the neck and try to work things out. They're all kind of playing their own individual game. And there was plenty of times where, for where I was, and just probably just left of where you're seeing in the homestand, where I was, there's plenty of times where I'm like, they're in, and just that pass wasn't coming. The weakness in this Crusader side is clearly in midfield. And that's not because they don't have nice passing ability, they don't have nice skills. It's just, one, they get pushed off the ball, and two, I just don't have the experience that they're going to be out battled there. And when you talk about their defense, which is again has many other problems where it just maybe doesn't have the skill level and the physicality that you need. Like, you compare their back line to others around them, Carrick, who are big, huge, beefy, and experienced coming out of the wazoo. The Portadown back two, or even back four, you would say, all well tenured Irish League players, and the 2 centre backs are going to deal with everything every day. You will be fooled by the mirage of Crusaders when you see Brooks doing something quite skillful, or you see Bryden taking it round somebody, or Dunlop outpacing a winger. But at the age that they are, they're just not going to have that consistency week in and week out. And they do. Crews are really onto something, but I think that game at the start of the season between Carrick and Crusaders was foreshadowing what we're gonna see elsewhere. Bangor in that game were able to just fight, and then get the ball away and get something out of kind of nothing. Like you look at the goal that's scored by Hassan. That's Jay Boyd just nicking it off a defender when he should have just thumped it into row G, because that's probably as far as it goes. A Clanny boy, like that's what they needed to do there, and they're all kind of at sixes and sevens when a ball falls into the path of McGuinness. So what did they do here? Like yeah, people might suggest, oh, just get some wily veterans like you'd want with Forsyth, for example. But at this league, doesn't everybody want that? And I doubt they come cheap.
No, exactly. I don't really know where they go from here. Like that match at the weekend is the perfect comparison for how much Crusaders have changed, because Bangor kind of epitomized Crusaders of old. Both of their goals were exactly what you would have seen Crusaders scoring a couple of years ago. As you say, I think you hit the nail on the head. They're trying to play through the midfield. They're trying to abandon that old style of just knock the ball up, but it's just not working. And I don't know if they're gonna abandon that idea. They've clearly built a squad that they think can do it. It's showing that it isn't, but I don't know if Declan's going to sit down and change that whole mindset that they've built this season so far.
Like that goal that they scored, that was the best bit of football that they'd finally got all day. But they've been trying that time and time again, and they can break through. But what I saw is for every one of those chances where Brooks nips in and gets a wee nice snapshot off, he's not being picked out by the likes of Williamson, who's like 17. I mean, sometimes you look at them and go, you can see these players are very, very young. It goes both ways. I was messaged by someone who supports a club in and around the bottom, and they said to me, like, Peter, for my lot, can I depend on Crews being rubbish or like this all season? And the answer is no. I don't think you can, because it could all work together. An experienced player comes in and sorts things out a wee bit, and those players start to click now that they're well adjusted in the league. And as he said earlier on, that was their first league game of October. Like, they're rusty, and you could see that. So I don't think they're going to be challenged in the top six this season based on this. We saw last year that they had a nice little run in January. They'll be hoping for something similar there, but the North Belfast Derby's coming up, and it might be the least interesting one we've seen for maybe 2 decades, and it's definitely looking like the one with the least amount of quality in it.
Never a game that massively excited me, and now it certainly doesn't.
So grades based on what they've done. Unfortunately, it's a D for me.
Yeah, I had a D minus.
I'm somewhere between a D minus and an F plus myself.
Fancy.
No, normally, for Crusaders as a whole, it's an F season, but based on where we sort of thought they would be going, it's maybe closer to a D, if you catch my drift.
Yeah, like we talked about this at the start of the season. We cannot judge them based on the previous Crusaders that we all knew, and we criticised them last season for not starting the rebuild. They have pieces that could be very vital as a part of this rebuild. You saw what Alford is now in the league, and I'm not going to be very surprised if Bryden, Dunlop, Brooks all can be that next year. And if that's in the red and black of Crusaders or not, if they come good, they're going to benefit from that. So we've got to give them a bit of time. They've played 2 less games than a lot of these other sides, but I'm concerned. But also, I can see that there's more to this side that could go right. Like there's timber that just needs to set a light. And when I look at Cliftonville, who are 1 point ahead of them in 10th after 10 games, that's maybe the one thing I am worried about. You may have sparks, but what's it going to ignite in this team?
Well, that's the problem, isn't it? And then it's even more of a problem when the sparks get sold next year, like Kieran Offord was.
But for Cliftonville, the results haven't been good. The vibes haven't been good. and 3 losses on the bounce, and it's a variety of and the past two of them being losing to Portadown. That's probably a key battle for them at home, and then well being well beaten by Larne. You're hoping for an easy game to try and get back on track, but what does that look like? And like I'm starting to see a bit of heat being thrown in the way of the management team. Like, is that fair?
I, I don't massively think it is fair to be honest. Look, there's a lot of worries, and you're saying there we need an easy game next. We've got Linfield in the cup, so it's the last thing that we needed to bounce back from that long game. Especially with them no doubt being up for it after Portadown. It's the reason I don't think it's fair to go after the management team is based on what we thought at the start of the season. It was going one of two ways. Either the money came in and there was transfers happening and things would look a lot different, or no money, no transfers, and kind of what we expected has happened. Now it's ended up worse, but the amount of injuries that we have, the top key players, and I know every team suffers with injuries. It's not something you can sit here and say, but
Go
we
on,
haven't
list them like
had
a manager that's feeling bad for themselves.
Campbell, Leopard, Conlon, Gordon, Corrigan, Fabatu maybe after the last game. So I came prepared, Peter. I had had them all written out. But yeah,
And
they're
they're big
all
players.
huge players, huge players. And Corrigan's not out for the season after that last
Oh,
game. More than likely, I think it's an ACL. So things aren't getting better, which is really worrying. And players that, the likes of Gormley, he's obviously getting a year older. He's not scoring goals the way he did last season, and there's no one else in there to support him. So,
yeah,
I could
you,
talk
you'd far
all night.
you'd far rather have the likes of Brooks than Falls at the minute, wouldn't you?
Yeah, Foles has struggled to get going, and he has been featuring. It's, you can't say that he hasn't had a chance, but no one's really clicking in that team. It's hard to just pick on one person. There are a few sort of positives looking at some of the players that have had the likes of Kevin Hawthorne has looked good. He's so young, but there's definitely something there for the future. Sean Robertson has looked great. I think he'll take some time to gel. But he's a bit gritty at times. He's still getting used to the way the league plays. But one of the real key players for me has been Fabatu. I think he's probably the best player we've had in that sort of position since Doc. He's looked like the closest replacement, but now it's kind of getting Hale to free up. We have talked about it in this podcast for ages. Hale plays too deep at times, but he has to because there's no one else in there to cover. Hopefully, as the season progresses, that position can kind of solidify and Hale can start to push up and we can be a wee bit more creative. But the amount of maybes and hopefullys I'm saying here is depressing.
Expectation, perhaps, also adding a bit of punch to how poor this has been. Like, is it a case of apathy creeping in now within the fan base, or is it still frustration just with all the thing that's potentially bubbling along in the background?
Yeah, it's a bit of both. I think I th there's a lot of sack the board obviously going on in the crowd, and that's still happening. That hasn't none of it's really made its way to the manager yet, as far as I can see. And as I say, I don't think it should. What's really surprising is our home form. It's always been pretty good. Uh,
It's off a cliff.
it's abysmal, and that's a clear part where you imagine Jim and the team will be looking and say, "This is what we need to get better. We need to be better at home." And Larne 2-0 at home, and Linfield is also at home, so we'll see how that goes.
What do you think Ross can be achieved by Cliftonville now the rest of the season? Like, look, they're 2 wins away from you know jumping above Ballymena and being in the contention again for being best of the rest. But as the nights get darker and the days get colder, I just feel like this Cliftonville side gets more brittle and less effective.
Yeah, I don't think they're in line to achieve a great deal, especially in the league this year, whether they get something together in the cups. I don't know, but what I will say, the results have sort of lined up with how you would expect them to be in the table. The teams have beat, you would they're teams that you would expect them to beat, and then with the exception of maybe Bangor on the first day, the teams that have beat them are sort of in line with who you would expect to beat Cliftonville, outside maybe Portadown as well, but last minute, extenuating circumstances. But they've snatched a couple of good points at home. The Coleraine and Larne, who are the two of the front runners. So I think it's early, and their position sort of isn't a true one at this stage, especially when they have a couple of games in hand on teams that are just above them. So I don't think it's all doom and gloom, but I don't think they'll do anything regardless. They'll still sort of be outside that top four we talked about at the start of the season.
From a squad point of view, Joe, do you look at other sides and think there's a lot of players that are probably better than what we have?
Uh, yes and no. The team are,
Like, do you not look at the Dungannon side and go,
yeah.
I would take a majority of their players into my
There's a
side?
lot of players in there that I would certainly take. And when you look at the team that we're having to field at the moment, due to those injuries, definitely there's a lot of players and teams around us that I would love to have. Even the likes of Fraser Bryden that we mentioned earlier, just a goal scorer would be brilliant to have right now. Ross,
Like Ross, if we were to have a combined Portadown and Cliftonville 11, I don't think it's 8-3 Cliftonville.
No, I was thinking there though. There's a few Cliftonville players I would take at Linfield, but it's outside of those big names, your Hales, Alice's, I like Jack Keeney. Outside of that, there's not a lot going on, and I think that's sort of Cliftonville's problem at the minute. That's where other teams have it up on them.
It's like you have, Joe, you have a couple of 8 out of 10s, but you've only got three, and then the drop off is very
yeah,
significant.
massively so. But again, look into that injury list. There's a couple of other 8 out of 10s on that. It's just when they all start to come back, and even the goalkeeper situation. We started with Rid. Jim is pretty ruthless when it comes to goalkeepers. PJ didn't have a brilliant game against Lauren. I don't know if you could necessarily blame him, but I don't think Jim's happy with some of the players that he's having to select at the moment.
I've actually went and said I think Cliftonville's report is worse than Crew's, and I've went for D minus because I think everything on the pitch has been difficult to watch or just lacking in quality, and then there's just been some big results that have really went wrong and not went their way. I do have a wee bit of a worry that they could get a bit stuck in the mud as they try to get back to where they feel as if they belong and competing with people to try and be the best of the rest. And I think Cliftonville and Crusaders, maybe it might be helped by the fact that they're going to play each other pretty soon. But outside of that, they have a bad run of form, and I think actually when I say a bad run of form, I mean tough fixtures. I think that's maybe the situation for maybe both those sides coming up. There might be more pain than coming up than there will be a recovery. It could be slow. So D minus, is that harsh?
No, I don't think I also have D minus. If it's a full squad, I think it's even worse. D minus is given those injuries. And as you say, yes, it is going to be. There's a rough patch to get through before we start to get better again. I will say there's glimpses when you watch us. There's definitely moments of, oh, something's clicked, and for that reason, Ross kind of hinted at it there. I think we'll maybe have a cup run. We could probably do something in the cup again, which will be perfect for us. But league wise, you're looking kind of, yeah. I think if we can get back up to seventh or sixth,
This season kind of DOA at this point.
I don't think so.
Okay, so there's still
Given
what you're saying is there's a
Yeah,
chance.
yeah, there's a chance, yeah. Given
Okay.
where I predicted us, if I'm right in saying, I think I said sixth or fifth, and like it's very early in the season, there might be a bit of a tougher time, but I think things will start to click eventually. We've shown in the past that we are a good side, so I'm holding out hope.
Or Ross complete the lineup.
I went D as well. I think the season is over. I don't think they're. I'll clarify. I didn't hint at any cup run. I just said
The
there
cup,
could
that
be
was
one.
fun for me. You said the
There,
cup, so
more than that, they are in cups, but I don't think that.
I mean, if I'm making stickers for this podcast, like our famous quotes, I think Cliftonville Cup run is kind of Joe's.
and look at the last couple of seasons for Jim. Am I wrong? Know
It's
what I
true.
mean?
That's true. If there was such thing as a eighth season catch up, I mean, Carrick would have been maybe getting an A, but they're not getting that now. They've had a strong start, poor end of this quarter, and I'm starting to feel a wee bit foolish for how overexcited I was by what felt like perhaps the end of that good run when I saw them against Dungannon. Everything we suggested they were going to be this season is what we've seen over the past 5 games broadly. They really, really struggle to score, and at the minute they are finally leaking a couple of goals. It's not a huge amount, but it's enough where the results aren't going their way, and they look like a very strong contender to be battling for that 11th. And many fans would probably see them as the de facto 11th side because they're probably seeing Cliftonville Crusaders higher up. Um, but again, with like Glenavon doing so badly, how much of a concern really is it? I guess they were dreaming, and now reality's starting to bite.
Yeah, definitely coming back down to earth. Sort of getting back to the average a wee bit more. They just have been on a bit of a skid. I didn't realize quite how long it was since they had that good run, and that was the end of August. And they haven't done much since then. They obviously beat the Ports. They put the Glens out of the Shield in midweek, just past there. But outside of that, it has sort of reverted to what you'd have expected. And I think just with Glenavon beating them, it does sort of bring things into a clear perspective, and they'll be half worrying again, that way.
Like it was on Saturday, I didn't watch all 90 minutes, but it's clear to me that while they had their moments testing the Glenavon back line, for Carrick, because those chances are just few and far between, and be it's somewhat of their DNA and it's how they're set up, and to try and keep things tight. And you'd probably say maybe 11 out of 11 other sides would have conceded that goal from Jack Malone. But if, and of course, we saw the complete opposite, on opening day there. But if you're seeing Carrick going down a goal, you're not thinking, well, they've got the juice to make this 2-1, 3-1, because it's clear, despite the talent, they don't.
Well, that's it, and it's a bit of a shock despite the talent. One thing I think they'll be somewhat positive about is the fact that they're not massively shipping goals. Like they're not going out there and losing 4-0 every week. You look at the likes of the teams around them, like Portadown and Dungannon, have conceded far more than them. Not to say that, Carrick are massively going to turn this around and stay exactly where they are. I think there certainly is a worry for them given their recent form, but there's something positive for Baxter to hold on to. If you can stop shipping as many goals, you can, points will come.
Like they're a C, and maybe it's unfair because they've played 2 less games than everybody else, but they're a C for me because when they've been good, they've had to kind of use all their skills and abilities to get there. And I just think it only takes one of those thrusters to either fail or have a bad day for them to revert as one of the more least effective, sounds harsh, but if they put themselves behind the 8 ball, it doesn't look like they're able to recover, and maybe they need to adjust. Maybe teams kind of know what they're all about. But again, what were the expectations going into this for Carrick? It was try and avoid relegation, and try and maybe not flirt with it as much. That looks like it's happening, but you said next 2 games, if they start to get a win or two, things can change massively. Because of that, and because of expectations, I've given them a C.
I,
which is a pass.
I've given them, you might be surprised, Peter, a B, and that is based on expectations. Especially where my predictions at the start of the season, I didn't have any hope for them. Obviously, it's very easy at this point, given their recent form, to think, oh, they're having an absolutely shocking season. But they started decent enough, and as you say, we're only a quarter of the way in. I think their fans will be reasonably okay with what they've seen based on expectations.
It's a bad result on Saturday. Like
Yeah,
it's a really
yeah.
bad because that was the 3 points that no, they've already beat Glavin this season, but it's just horrendous to give away. I know it was away from home, but I like bits and pieces. Like Danny Gibson's lost a bit of his form, unfortunately for them. Aiden Steele's probably going a wee bit under the radar. Joe Crow is still a monster, but you look at their bench and you say it's not well. I look at it on Saturday, and maybe I'm wrong here, but like I just like little pieces like Jack Scott and Ryan McKay, but it's just not all syncing up. So okay, cool. B, that's positive. Are you as positive, Ross?
I went C plus. I think they're compared to obviously where we had them. There was a man chased out of Pug Uglies for his card prediction,
I'm still looking
and
over his shoulder every time I'm carried.
Not me.
and they've obviously way exceeded expectations. The people at the start were saying that this was going to be an old people's home, and it was one last paycheck for Stephen Baxter's mates. But from what I've heard and what I've seen, Paul Heatley's still doing it. Um, Jimmy Gallagher, BJ Burns still doing it. Lecky before he got injured, he had got a couple. So if they can keep the older players fit, which was always going to be the issue, then their experience should just see them through, I would imagine.
Well, we go up to Dungannon, and again we'll flip reverse it. If it was start of the season, Dungannon would have been bad. I think we've seen now that Rodney can rework things, and perhaps you're only one or two players away. That one player that Dungannon Swifts were away was the big beefy junior. Their winning run came to an end there on Saturday, up to one of the best teams in the league and the team that's currently sitting top. Um, I'm going to say because they're maybe only one win or two away from being up there with the best of the rest. Um, it's a B because of how they were able to turn it around with the Swifts.
Interesting. I have them as a C minus. Thinking about the start of the league now, you have to appreciate it, as you say, that they've managed to turn it around, but it's hard to look past the fact they've conceded so many from the start. That's a big blow at the weekend, 4-0, but as you say, it's Korean. They might not want to look into it too much and just get on with it next week.
Right, it's B minus. Sorry.
I go C myself as well. I think they're going to be a team of freak results all year. I think. I mean, no one would have had Carrick beating them. No one would have had Portadown hiding them. But then also they've went and they've beat Cliftonville, Larne, and the Glens all in the last month or so. So I think take out those first few games, they're about where you'd expect them to be. Maybe last year was a bit of a freak in itself, and they're sort of going back to where you'd expect the Dungannon team to be. But the way they were playing before Coleraine, you'd be happy enough. And it's Coleraine, like what are you going to do? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I see. I look at the Swifts, and if you compare them to Carrick, Carrick is a side that was rolling, and then a tire went bust, and they've just kind of hobbled along the road ever since. Dungannon feel like a side who jumped in, the whole car went to a stuttering start, and they've changed the oil, and everything's running smoothly up until Saturday. And again, you'd probably rank that as one of the harder games they'll play. Um, Everything looks very proficient, and they're getting nice results at home, particularly again after not doing that early in the season. And yeah, broadly, they still could do with one or two extra players, but they look like they're doing all the simple things right again. And I think the Swifts will be a difficult proposition for everybody. I don't see them as a team who's going to slip up against a Glenavon. Let's just say, I think they're going to be quite proficient, but will maybe when they truly have to measure up against the top four, they'll show how really far away they are compared to them in those games, and I think Saturday's a very good example of that. We go up the 7th and Portadown, and Ross, there's a whole heap of people who go to Shamrock Park every week who were probably fearful of you swaggering into this podcast to give your quarter season assessment, and they'll feel as though slightly your wings are being clipped. It is only 12 games, and one game is a big part of the pie here, but it does somewhat change the complexion ever so slightly of how you judge this early part of the season for Portadown, because it's looked pretty low at times, but then you look at the past 3 or 4 games they played in the league, they've got 9 points, but you mix in also being dumped out of the cup by Newry. Like, who and what is this side?
Yeah, they're a real mixed bag. And I know about it because they tell me every time they win a game. So I like to have that every 2 weeks. But
Like, you are the Portadown Panto villain this year.
did somebody put my phone number in a Portadown forum or something? Because I was rang on 91 minutes with someone saying Caledonia. So
You are joking me.
he knows who he is, and he listens to the pod. So fair play to him, it was funny, but it wasn't the time nor the place for that. But yeah, listen, I could dismantle their wins as I have had to do over the season. But we could all beat a 9-man Dungannon. Crews are rubbish, Clinville are rubbish, Glenavon are rubbish, and obviously Linfield. We all know my thoughts on Linfield. They're a terrible football team. So we all beat Linfield as well.
Can I
So
just say,
really, if you think about it, they're on 0 points.
that's an ongoing note he's had all season. Every single result he's taken note as the as to why it's not really a win.
I've seen Portadown live once or twice this year, and I mean, I watched, like I said there a few weeks ago, I watched that game against Glenavon that they won, and the first half, I'm like, here it is, 11th and 12th, it's done, shut her down. But then they go and beat Linfield, and we haven't, and we're not going to spend too much time talking about your quarter team of the season. That's for the half team of the season podcast. But if you're looking at players who are dark horses or looking pretty good to be in the consideration for team of the season or half team of the season, sorry, I mean, James Teelan's in there. Like, he has his off and his on days. Maybe I'm just overawed by the 20 minutes that I saw of the game the other night. But they are getting performances out of some of these players, maybe just not at a consistent level.
No, and that was going to be their issue. They've got their starting 11 you like the look of, but as I said at the start of the season, injuries, if players drop out, that's where you're worried. Or in the same vein, if the player's having a bad day, there's not a great deal to change it, I don't think personally. So outside of their 11 would be my concern for them. Obviously they're doing a hell of a lot better than I thought they were going to do. But what I will say, to save a bit of face, it's jam packed in and around them. There's points, teams within a few points either way of them. So I wouldn't be counting any Portadown chickens yet, but plenty of people are doing it for me, so I don't need to worry about that.
Well, usually it's Golden Cows, I think they count and Portadown, but yeah, like, you're totally right. You could see it in a situation where they're still in the same points, but you just swap the Linfield win with a Carrick win, and you're kind of all in the same place. It's obviously concerning that they're losing against Bangor and Carrick, but you've also got to go, well, they're beating Linfield at home and Cliftonville away, so there's a positive for being a team that gets up and at them, and they're kind of a team that lives in the moment. But you probably want something that's a bit more tactile and focused than just the hope that they'll turn up on the day.
But is that not kind of like we sat here at the start of the season? Is that not kind of what we expected from Portadown? Like, I'm not massively shocked by this result in a sense of it's not like I haven't seen Portadown get a result against Linfield before. They can get themselves up for that big game, and where, if I'm right in saying, I worried about them at the start was the teams that are around them. And yes, I know they obviously got the points against Glenavon, but up until the weekend, who wasn't? Um, so like it's kind of what I expected from them, really.
Is that why? Because you can see all this discussion online where teams are bouncing back and forward. Where if there's people that feel frustrated with the management team, I know it's changed a bit. I put it down, and there's other fans that are coming in and saying, "But look at this, this, and this." Is that where, from if people were looking at it from a Port Down perspective, the ones who are watching them week in and week out are saying perhaps they would like to see something that looks more like a focused strategy that it continues on rather than a big night at Shamrock.
I think so, and I think that's kind of what they haven't had for the last couple of years. I think if you're talking to a lot of Portadown fans, they'll say that like you can't really predict either what team is going to go out there or what way they're going to play against each team. It's kind of a bit sort of all or nothing. I mean, they haven't even had a draw yet this season, which kind of also proves that it's either the win or the don't. It's one of the two.
Well, Bangor and the Swifts are a wee bit like that as well. Like it's a hard team to put down a grade for. What did you give them?
I originally had them down as C. I've given them a B minus based on my prediction at the start of the season.
Ross, everyone's on tenterhooks here.
With you here, is it?
I mean, from my prediction, I suppose it's like a B heading towards an A. But gauging off the reaction I got, it's like an F. You know what I mean? Because this is a title challenging Ports team, from what I was told. So depends who you want to listen to, I guess. But probably about a B or a C.
The record states that they're pretty much doing the same as they did last year. So they're in a good situation where they're 12 points off Glenavon at the minute. So they'll feel pretty bullish about that. I'm gonna say it's a passing grade as a C. Again, you see them good, you see them bad. We don't really know where that takes them. It feels very similar for Ballymena, if I'm being totally honest. They too have a nice little victory against Infield, which everyone was getting excited about. But you also see that they struggle to score massively. They don't look like the coherence sounds like a very crushing words to describe it in, but it doesn't look like it all flows together, and this has been a long-term problem. I talked to Stephen Alexander last week about how I look at this Ballymena team and I don't know what their 11 are, and I couldn't really try and figure out, even if I had my own views on how football's played, how you create a consistent winning team there. And I'll just go out and say it. It's a C, it's a pass, because it isn't bad, but despite them being sick, it's not really good either, is it? Like there's a lot to be questioning about.
It's not great, but I reckon a lot of Ballymena fans would bite your hand off for sixth at the end of the season. So,
And it's where I predicted them to be,
yep.
but
And
they're a loss or two away and victories for other teams to be down. Like we talk about eye tests a lot. The eye test is a bit ugly here.
yeah, the eye test isn't good at all. They don't look a good football team, but they are just they're middle of the road. They're sixth. They've won five, lost six. Their goal difference is only -1. That I think that's just going to be the story of Ballymena throughout the season. And you know what? That gets you European playoff. That gets you well away from any trouble. That they haven't been in any chats about facing relegation. I think they'll be more than happy enough with that.
Yeah, I've given them a B rating, and it's kind of exactly what Ross said there. I think Ballymena fans will be relatively happy enough with how the season's going so far.
It's one of those things where we go back to another school analogy. It's like could do more.
I think what sums it up is Ben Kennedy sums them up as a player, as a team. Could do more, but he's still their top scorer, so it's all right. He he was supposed to be the guy to come in and bring Ballymena to the next level. They've obviously invested a little bit more this summer, um, but they are just that middling team. Maybe if they get a goal scorer, if they get someone talismanic Ryan McNichol looks all right, but he's making the step up in level. Calvin McCurry has never really made the step up from the Championship. So you do wonder if they get that player, if that success Oregon who can push on and score goals for them, do things change? But it's it. I think they'll be happy enough, while it's also thinking, yeah, we could do better there.
Despite having only conceded 16, I'm not raving about their back line at the minute and how they deal with in-game situations. And I just, when you talk about the fear test, right? If you're going up against the Swifts, you're thinking they can punish us. If you're going up against Portadown, you might go, yeah, they can have an off day, but there's something to them where James Teelan or somebody could punish you. For Ballymena, everyone thinks we could get something out of this because they're just so at times limp up top.
Yeah, and I think that kind of impression of Ballymena feeds on from last year. It doesn't massively feel like when you talk about the eye test, when you look at them, like they've massively improved. And okay, I know I've given them a B rating given the level of investment they have. Maybe you could look at that rating being a bit lower, but if, the teams that are around them, the teams they're playing, I think they're having an okay verging on good season so far.
The the thing you say about you can accept a defeat to Portadown more, perhaps. I agree. I think once I've calmed down from the other night and acknowledge that it was probably just a bad day at the office, I will look back and think that Ballymena loss is a lot more annoying than a Portadown loss, just because Ports can get up for it on Shamrock Park Friday nights, but you just don't feel that for Ballymena, and that was another limp performance where Ballymena did deserve to win, but it is just that bit more annoying, as you say.
They've scored just as many. Like it's funny. This is where I keep talking about the eye test because they've scored exactly the same because they're just 1 point ahead of Portadown. They've scored as many goals as Portadown, more than the Swifts, and conceded far less than either of those two teams. But you like the other two teams a bit more than them, and just a game-to-game thing. Like I said, I think it's positive. It's not negative. They're not doing bad, but there's definitely a couple of missed chances, and I don't love they've got some tough games coming up as well. But I just don't love. I don't feel that they've got, that I would go back to that fuel analogy, the fuel to really push on. But hey, there's young players which we've talked about in this podcast before, and maybe they could be the spark that we've all been looking. Ross, we didn't get your grade.
I go B for Ballymena.
Ballymena B. Oh, look at that, 5th, Linfield. That's surprising. Only played 8 games though because reasons. 16 points, only 2 wins in their last 4 games. Actually, only 2 wins out of their last 5 games in the league. Again, the Portadown result somewhat, it's put a bitter taste in the mouth before you kind of get into the grade. I think we go grade first and talk about it afterwards, Ross, because I think everyone can't hack the anticipation here.
People aren't going to like it, but I'm going to go for D.
D.
Heading towards D minus. Yeah.
Ross
Yeah.
Welsh doing Ross Welsh things. I think this is it's more than a pass. It's a B. You've got Offord up there. He's got a nice connection with, Fitzpatrick. The midfield thing drives me bonkers because I just don't see the thrust that is required to play the system that you have. But it's only weird results.
It's like every time I'm on this podcast, the results are fine, right? Everybody listen and write it down. The results are fine. The performances are horrendous. And then when you get quote unquote freak results, they're not freak results because they've been coming for weeks and weeks. And you just look at it and you think, yeah, that's about right. We're due one of them. I've thought about it in the 1 minute since I said it? And have I been a bit harsh with the D, perhaps? So maybe upgrade that to C. But because the table doesn't look good with the games in hand, obviously. and if you add them in, no promises we win those games, but it does bring you up to a little bit more of a respectable position. But like, you can't be arguing this is a good season so far. You really can't. I'm gonna pull my hair out if one of you does.
No, it's not an A season. That's why we're doing grades, right? It's not an A season. I don't think you're going to say A, Joe, are you?
Well, I wasn't not going to say for
Oh,
me.
ridiculous.
Like,
Listen, you talk it out. You talk it out and let me know when you get the banger.
can I just say D is insane? I know you changed it to C there. For me, that's still insane. Like looking at the league, and I know it's the whole point you've just said. I'm going to give him a B plus, and the reason for it is I go to the matches with Ross, and I can see where he is frustrated. But it's Linfield, and it has been Linfield for years, and they will just be fine. More than likely, they're going to win those games in hand, and in a couple of weeks' time, they'll be sitting top of the league, and
This is
no one
this
will be shocked.
this is exactly what I'm saying. They'll be fine. It's just a freak result. No, it's actually a load of rubbish every week.
It
It's
will be fine. I know, but it has been a load of rubbish every week for seasons.
That's what I'm saying.
Yes,
That's
and I
what I'm
agree.
saying.
But
It's this has been
what would you have graded your season last season?
A because one league.
Yes, and that's how you will end up doing okay,
Right?
and you
No,
will end up doing a decent
but
season.
there wasn't a real challenge last year.
I think that the results like that put it down. One performances like that aren't isolated to this season. I think he's been doing it for years.
Yes,
Get away.
yes, I agree. But it certainly wasn't isolated to Friday night this season.
Yeah. And if we're comparing season to other seasons, that result is a draw last year, isn't it? And that Ballymena result's different in previous seasons. And when you have now three competitors with you at the top of the league, calm yourselves down, Banger, okay? You have three real competitors with you at the top of the league. It makes it feel even worse. The midfield thing is the quandary here because the Archer thing, when he played so many games in Europe, he's out the side. Um, the player who couldn't get into the Glenavon first 11, which is why he needed to get away, Isaac Bird, he's like the crown jewel. He's the new favourite toy. And I'm yet to see him really have a huge impact on the game. Sean Brown's the find of the season for Linfield. But you see, without Shields, which you were on Friday night, you don't have that same kind of guile. And when you have Kieran Alford maybe just not up to the standard he's previous been, or just not as cutting as he can be, Fitzy getting marked out of the game, you have McCarry having a good game, you could see results like that.
It wasn't just that we got beat, or that it was bad to watch, or that we didn't play well. It was the fact that it was so predictable to see that it was happening, and it kind of shock you. It's not the first time I've thought that watching a Linfield performance.
Who are the players that are going to come in and change this? Because clearly Healy has some players in his crosshairs now. Like, is John's place safe again after what we saw last season? Like, Chris McKee always feels like he's coming on with 20 minutes to go, no matter season upon season. I thought I saw Sam Taylor in the game that I covered. I was covering the Ghost Goal game, and I thought he was
He was
electric.
brilliant, and then he hasn't had a sniff since. Chris Shields, I think we're maybe never going to see Chris Shields play for Linfield again, just because of it's a bad injury. Chris Jones, funny enough, I think has been one of our better players this year, which is polar opposite to what was last year. Fitzy and Offord were so isolated.
McLean doesn't look like the same player.
McCallion doesn't look the same player. Kurt Miller has not had a good season. Ben Hall and Sam Roscoe at the back look absolute shadows of themselves. Ewan East has been in and out of the team. Sean Brown's been brilliant, but I don't know. Callum Morrison.
I mean, it's not what you hope for in a reportedly 100 grand kind of spend, is it?
It looks like he doesn't want to be there, which maybe he doesn't. Fine, but I'm sure you're picking up a hefty enough pay packet. Like, put
Is
yourself.
that just based on attitude or play? Because
It's attitude. Like, he's a sulky player and he looks like he's not bothered, but then he pops up and he bangs one in from however far out. Fine, but he looks not a good Irish League player. He looks like he doesn't care, which maybe he doesn't. Fine, but well, it's not fine. But I'm over it with him personally. It's just the whole club is not in a good spot at the minute. And I was very bullish at the start of the season. I thought Coleraine would not be all that. I thought we would still win the league, but that is probably not my opinion anymore. It's it's annoying as anything, let me tell you.
Where's the soft touch? That's what I say. I've seen in a couple of these games is that you've been able to get got at, and with that, that just creates opportunities for teams to break away or score from a corner in the way that we saw on Friday night.
Starts with the defence for me. Looks very get outable. The centre halves don't look comfortable with the ball at their feet, which is then leading to the hoof ball, which is just so enjoyable to watch. Um, the fullbacks, Ewan East is a great player, but he's not an attacking fullback. He's a centre half. Sean Brown's brilliant, but we don't seem to be using him because of the system we're playing with the three at the back. You've then got Kirk Miller and Callum Morrison when he plays, or wing backs, which is a nonsense. Sam Taylor came on Friday night, left-footed player, and they stuck him at right wing back. The midfield was non-existent. It's just like, why we're bringing Chris McKay on at centre midfield more than once in a season. So we ended up with, I think we had McKay and maybe Archer at one point in centre midfield. So there's your soft touch because they're two attacking players. They're not the players that sit in. Yeah, yeah.
What is the solution then, Ross? Because there's a lot of personnel there who are very, like I would love them. A lot of teams around would love them. Even the likes of Korean would probably like a lot of those players. They're clearly good players. Something's not working. You've mentioned they're playing, and they're like, is it Haley now needs to go? Is it what is the change?
I don't know if he needs to go, but like, would he please just change something? Like, the three at the back clearly doesn't work, and it's almost as if it's like a stubbornness to be like, well, everybody's saying it, and it's not my idea, so I'm not going to do it. There's 14 players he was saying out of contract at the end of the season. Like, you would think 14 players in a contract year, like they'll all be trying to get a place for next year. Obviously not. From what I've seen, I don't know if they're being the quality is being coached out of them. It seems like there's a fear to do anything, which is fair enough because it's a hostile crowd, and I don't like to, but I became part of it on Friday, and I got on the players' back. But like, so there's just a fear of doing something wrong, which there should be, I suppose, but not to the extent that there appears to be on the pitch at the minute. So if you boil it down for me, Friday night I think was on the players as well as the shape, but generally I think it's on the coaching and the shape and the tactics at the minute.
Would you have booed yourself on Friday?
Well, like I said at the start of the podcast, I was fine, and now you've riled me up. The two is as you like to do, and it's that's a load of rubbish. I nearly swore that's a load of rubbish. Like, you were never booing yourself, and what? How do you even do that? I went full Keegan here, but like, how do you?
I love it if you booed
We have to
yourself.
go to Cliftonville and get something on Tuesday,
Yeah, okay.
and I don't know. I don't
Well,
know.
it was a very hands-up interview from him, obviously. Surely, like if you go out against us on Tuesday and do the same thing again, set up the same way, for me that interview was purely optics then.
It is. I think it
Like,
is
there's not
optics
the
because
time. Go
he
ahead.
didn't come over and apologize. He came over and clapped. Like, you go over and come within 30 yards of the fans for a start.
But it needed addressed. Like, there was fans going, why is he just saying disappointing tonight? It was more than disappointing. It was an overall bad
It was
performance.
it was
But
terrible. But come over and hold your hands up and say that was me. That was a terrible shape for the 10th time this season. Apologies, folks. Don't do it when you're in a sanitized one-on-one interview where you can say what you want. But I don't like. I don't know.
Q 4-0 victory on Saturday. Bangor fans will think, why have I had to wait so long for you to talk about us? But guess what? That's because you're so high up in the table. 18 points, 15 points off last place. People were saying to me on Saturday, because before that game they were 15 points off Glenavon. If they were 15 points off anybody at any point, they wouldn't bite your hand off to take the whole arm. This is the most like nailed on A-star report card you can give. This is a team who has done almost everything right and have given themselves the platform to have a season that they probably can't remember having in decades, maybe even this century. Like, legitimately, this is just wonderland, dreamland for Bangor.
Yeah, it's an A+ rating for me so far, and hats off to Lee Feeney because not many teams have come up and done it, but he's bit the bullet and changed how they play. We saw them in the championship last year, and at times they were actually quite a nice looking football team. And I'm sure Bangor fans won't be annoyed at me saying it. They're not exactly pretty to watch at the moment. I referred to them as like an old Crusaders earlier, but that's what they needed. If that had come up here and tried to play football through the middle, you look at likes of Scott MacArthur was playing all the time last year. He's a nice and tidy football player. He has not featured at all, and that signifies that Lee Finney came into this season and thought, I'm gonna have to change things up, and it's working so far.
Like, they played Hockey and Owens at the back on Saturday. They should have been crushed in this league when it comes to pace. And who are they up against? Potentially the paciest front three in the league. It just works. They have that. They when it comes to experience, it's working. When it comes to players that didn't like work out elsewhere, they're fitting in and they're doing a job. People are stepping up. Arthurs can actually be a very frustrating player to watch. I'll say that. I mean, the fella can sometimes lose concentration. Maybe he isn't really putting a shift in when he should be to win balls. But then sometimes the ball gets played into him and he is gliding like a gazelle, shoving off a defender. So I do expect a decline from Bangor eventually. But who have they beaten this? Okay, so they've beaten, well, everybody's beat Glenavon. Beat Glenavon, beat the Crews, beat Cliftonville at the start of the season. I can't remember if, well, they played against Carrick and they were winning up until the health emergency called that off. They beat Portadown away from home. I don't know what their result was against Ballymena. Like, this is all, like, that's what you need to do, isn't it? And you could see all those results be reversed come the end of it. And, of course, they could slip down to 11th place very easily. But you got to say that they don't need to go for the juggler now in these games. They can sit back and get a few surprise results. Yeah, I've maybe wasn't giving them enough credit at the start of the season. The credit's there now.
100%. Totally different team to last year, as Joseph was saying there. They can mix it, but they can then. The teams around them, they played some nice stuff when they beat the Ports. There's they're a mixed bag, but they're not a mixed bag in that some of the results they're getting fair enough. They've took a couple of hidings, but they can dish them out themselves. I would give them an A-star in that, or they maybe 2 wins away from being safe.
Well, the argument would be, I think I've done it before, we're pretty much 27 points of safety. So the fact that they're 3 wins away from safety based on averages, you'd say yes.
I don't like Lewis Bennett. I see his tweets every now and then, and the general theme of them just seem to be, "This is great, isn't it? Who'd have thought this was going to happen?" And it is, because they're every right to be in Dreamland. It's obviously so cliche, but not too long ago they were playing against Ballywalter Bears, and now they're beating established Irish League teams, and they're looking good for it.
You don't want to play against them, do you? That win against Coleraine, how did I forget that? That was the other one I was missing. Yeah, you don't want to play against them. I wonder next year how many of their players will be picked off. But it's just little things like Tiernan Mulvena, like he's playing nice little balls in midfield. Harrison's probably one of the more underrated players in the league. They're getting something out of Jay Boyd. He kind of floated around at the bottom of that table with Lock All previously. I've said this before. They stay one year in this division, and they are going to be a very hot destination, especially with Glenavon potentially being one of the teams that are not going to be in the top flight if all things work out. So they just need to stick around, and I think maybe that Crusaders result is still more in the tank for them, and I don't know what the stats are, but they might actually be I keep saying, well, we've seen Loughgall, Newry, and Portadown all go up and do brilliant. They might be the best of that lot based on just how they've started. So, yeah, whatever our grades were, it would be sacrilegious if it wasn't an A. Very similar for Larne. A obviously doesn't have the kind of surprise and the glamour and the story and the narrative that Bangor is, but a weird wonky draw against Cliftonville earlier on at the start of the season. Ditto in the sense that that game really could have went either way against Coleraine, and from there they've just got around about their business. They're getting their players back, the likes of Paul O'Neill. They've got this unique mix at the top. I do think I want to start seeing this same 11 win week in and week out, and maybe more performances like we saw there on Saturday against Cliftonville would be the better. But this is an A season. They're back to being a top side in this league, and we just need to see now them play Blues. Twice or three times. Glentoran twice or three times. How will they shape up against Coleraine again? Big time games. They're coming, but so far they've knocked down the pins with ease most of the time so far.
Yeah. Based on what I've seen, I've actually also give them an A plus. Mainly from a point of view of it was vital that they get back to being seen as not that they're fallen away from being a top contender by any means, but they're now, I think they have the best defensive record in the league. They've only conceded four.
I saw
And
I saw a stat there that pretty much Ferguson we got 200 games there for Lauren, and he almost has a 50% clean sheet rate. That's
it's amazing.
bonkers.
It's ridiculous, isn't it?
What you think of Lauren, and that's kind of they're getting back to that sort of Lauren of 2 years ago in a sense of they just kind of go out there and do the business and then go home.
They'll do that time and time again. We just need to see them tested properly, is what I would say. Like consistency's there, goals are somewhat there. Being stout at the backs there. Clearly, what will define their season is just those other big games. So we'll have to see them. And we go up to Glentoran in second. I'm gonna be very bullish about this. This has been a brilliant start to the season. I know we're waiting for it all to fall down, but you look at how they've delivered in the big games, and that's what they've done. Beat Coleraine, get a result against Linfield, and they're not like as assured as you'd see the other teams. Like you don't see them blasting through other teams in the same kind of way. Like they kind of huff and puff and struggle and all the rest against Ballaminas and others, and maybe some teams will feel as though they've been unlucky not to get something out of a game against them, but they kind of are still here. And if they do it for another 6 games, then they're there. They're in the hunt.
We're in that sweet spot where I'm beginning to get worried about them. They're grinding out results. They've yet to score more than two in a game, but they're still winning. So that just shows how sort of shored up their defense is, barring that Dungannon game the other week. They just look pretty good. Hubin has come in and he's maybe not playing fantastically, but he's getting on the score sheet. Jenkins is chipping in. Succa is looking like a new man. All of a sudden, it's just beginning to worry me a little touch.
Like perhaps they're not that far away from a bit of a tricky set of results against teams that would like to be getting 3 points time and time again. But based on the idea was a bit of stability, some good results, don't embarrass yourselves against the top teams, and somewhat show the lower to the middle of the pack who's boss. You're ticking all those boxes, aren't you?
I tell you, they have a great run of games coming up. Ports Cruise in the Cup, Glenavon, Carrick, Dungannon, Bangor, Cliftonville. I mean, like if they
Q
want,
7 points.
if yeah, it either they want to pull away and they will, or I'll need to be on the pod again in about 4 weeks' time just to chat things over, you know. But that's the beauty of the Glens that you almost they're shaking that you don't know what you're going to get with them label, and they're becoming more efficient. I think is the word. They're almost looking like a Larn light in the way they're going about their business.
Six
Yeah.
goals conceded. There's other better teams there, isn't there? But Joe, you'd like plenty of other teams would like to be in the position they're in.
Oh, massively so. Massively so. And I think coming into the season, I don't know if many Glentoran fans would have expected them to be just this good. I think accidentally at the start of the podcast, I said they lost the Korean. That win against Korean was absolutely massive for them and something that in previous years, I don't think they could have been able to pull out. Yes, last year they obviously did very well against Linfield, but that sort of coming up against the likes of Larne and Korean this season, I think is usually where we would have expected them to falter. But they were brilliant away from home, and as Ross says, I'm also slightly starting to worry. But look, Christmas is usually when we start to talk about them again.
A's all round then.
A plus
Yeah,
for me.
yeah, leaning towards A plus. When you already have a trophy in the bank after getting a 1-1 draw in your cup final, you have to give them an A, don't you? So
Tell you what, Ross, I need to get you on a Patreon because people would just.
imagine this behind a paywall.
I
Wow.
mean, I mean, fans are just like, I need to hear it, need to see it every week. And I am the one getting it with my big spoon stirring the pot, sir. But look, we're expecting it all to fall down, and let's be fair, they've earned that. They've well earned that reputation. But again, yeah, maybe so. But as long as they're top four, you'd probably say that they've done well, and there's it feels like there's some long term planning going on here. But hey, season to season, let's not get
I'm
too
ve-
ahead of ourselves.
I'm very almost at the point where I'm not expecting it to fall down. I think it just does
And
feel,
that's and
and that's
that's
the beauty of it, isn't it? But it just feels a
dark before
little
the
bit different
dawn.
this year. It just feels a little bit different. I don't like it, but
Just when you thought there was no slip up, they snap in and they get you. Everybody was hoping for a fall down for Korean this year. Then they thought, here it is. But then they go thump one of the most informed sides in this division. They could have had a more perfect copybook, of course it is, but football's not about perfection. They are sitting top of the table, mainly due to other teams having a few games in hand. Um, but when we've seen them tear through teams, it's unlike anything really we've seen in this league over the past few years. Are they flapjack bullies? Perhaps. Um, and maybe we need to see how they really go. Maybe their Achilles heel is going to be how they do in big games because they've squeezed by Larne just about, and then they lose to you know Glentoran, and both those games were at home, weren't they? So let's not get too excited. But for everybody hoping that the Moneyball project or the flooding of cash and going full time and snapping up all these players was going to take a while for it to ferment, that hasn't been the case. Been big
No,
bumps, but it's been scintillating at times.
yeah, and like hats off to them because, as you say there, it's very easy to go out and buy all the best players in the league. It's another thing to make that work. And we've seen it previously, teams going out, spend a whole load of money. It just takes it either a while to work or it never does. And maybe you could say last year was their sort of, their bit of time for teething with some of the players that they bought and that they didn't exactly hit the ground running. But they've started this season so well. It is scary the amount of goals that they've scored. It feels like a long time since we've seen such a dominant team that scores so many. You've had the likes of Larne and Linfield in the past winning leagues and maybe they win 1 or 2-0, but this Korean side are just absolutely electric.
Joel Cooper's the top goal scorer in the league at the minute with 6, Fraser Bryden's joined on him there, which feels odd, but then, it's that time of the season. But Shevon's there third with 5, and then there's Will Patching, who, well, maybe beefed up slightly by penalties there, 4 goals, but he's a difference maker. Every side would want him in their team, and if you're poo-pooing my suggestions earlier on, Patching's almost nailed on for half team of the season already.
100%. I think everybody sort of knew when he came into the league, he'd almost be a class above, and he's shown it. He's dictating for Corey, and he's sort of getting them ticking. Cooper was the best player in the league by a distance last year, so you've got the argument they've got the 2 best players in the league. This guy Okoro, who's coming from Lincoln, looks a player. Shevlin is scoring goals as he does. They've got Declan McManus, who was brought in as this mega goal scorer, and he can barely get a kick. So that just shows you sort of where they're at the minute. And this is just looking like a proper football team who's going to win a lot of games.
They're potentially a couple of weeks away themselves from creating a bit of daylight.
They play the Blues twice in about a week and a half, and that is probably season defining for both them teams.
So we can see there's a wobble in them, obviously, but keep the head down, and it could start to look a bit more real, because it's all hypothetical at this point. Of course it is, but the Korean project, you can see it really sparkle. It's an A, but it's funny because the moments, because for every 4-0 against Dungannon, you've got a lucky red card against Glenavon. So it's like the stats kind of lie as well.
Yeah, it's an A for me, and I the only thing that's not pushing up the an A plus is the defense. Not that it's a bad defense by any means, but when you look at the other teams that were going to be competing, the likes of
They could be more ruthless.
Exactly, yeah, they've conceded more than those teams. So look, there's a thing of the defense could, or the attack could eventually sort of fizzle out later in the season. Injuries can appear, and if that defense isn't as solid as it could be, then who knows? It's a long way from the end of the season.
It's a good strong A plus for me. I'm very impressed. I didn't think they were going to be all this, and they just have been. You know, getting beat by the Glens at home, the wheels can come off there, and they haven't. They're just back to beating teams again, not even getting out of second gear. It's concerning, and as you said, it's almost as if they had their bedding in period at the tail end of last season. So this could be it for a wee while in terms of Korean being at the top of the table challenging anyway.
Look ahead to 6 games on Saturday. We'll stick a pin on anything midweek, and I've just got to go straight to Windsor Park and Linfield taking on Ballymena. I think the last time Ballymena beat Linfield at Windsor Park, TVs were black and white. Are we starting to see a bit of history being made again?
I'd really rather not. I think it'll be a boring 2-0 win. Just steady the ship in the way that we can. But I am also a Liverpool supporter, and I said that they'd only lose one and then just get back on the horse, so it can be done. And it's kind of a good time to play Linfield, I would imagine, because that can't be a happy dressing room at the minute. Ballymena have the recipe. Apparently, they know how to beat us, so have at it, I guess. But hopefully something changes, please.
No, I ultra boring 1-0 for Linfield. Like everything just done.
Like every other game. Oh yeah, I'm expecting to just sit and tolerate.
Yeah, well, you'd be surprised. I think he could start pretty well here and come out of the traps. This Ballymena side can sometimes look. They got the best out of it just about earlier on when it came to the result. I don't expect it to really go anything different when it comes to the form table. Linfield win there. You can say a 2, you can say a 3. I think a goal here would be good for Ballymena, 'cause they do have a couple of difficult games coming up, and you don't want to feel like your head's down going into any other ones, but I can't see them getting anything out of that. Um, Cliftonville going to Carrick, like, pressure's on to try and get something here, Joe, because Carrick are going to make this difficult. Carrick are going to make it slow. It's on their patch, and I just wondered, do Cliftonville have the players that could unlock the back line of Carrick? Because you could see this being a 0-0, 1-1.
You could, but I think it's a real sort of test in time now for Cliftonville. Things need to start happening. I don't think that Carrick team particularly scare me that much, really. Our away form scares me, but I mean, I think we're 3-1 Cliftonville. I think it'll be nervy at the start. That third goal will come later on.
I can't see anything close to 3-1, Ross.
No, I think it's sneaky the game of the weekend. I think it's probably the one with the most riding on it. Strangely enough, it's it's certainly not a 3-1. I kind of fancy Carrick a little bit to reverse their bad run. I get,
I don't. I can't see that at all. To be honest, look, we haven't been brilliant. Ross, you said at the start of the season, we're beating the teams most of the time that we're expected to beat, and I think we're expected to beat Carrick.
I just think these are too blunt. I could see a good Carrick rear guard action. I could see that happening. I'll go, oh, 2-1 Carrick.
I'm gonna stick with my draw. Out of all the most outrageous texts, Ross, I think you claiming this could be game of the weekend might be the most egregious, but we'll leave that there, and we'll go to a game which I think probably will be game of the weekend, and the game that's played at 5:30. You can get a wee double weekender if you want on Saturday. Larne against Bangor. I think Larne should be able to take care of business.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's a pretty straightforward 3-0 for me. As good as Bangor have been, I think Larne are just too.
It's a tough task away from home.
It's a lot to ask for.
Yeah, I think it's probably very similar to 2-0, 3-0 Larne.
Yeah, I agree. 2-0 Lauren. No reflection on Bangor. I just think that's what Lauren do to teams when they're at home. They just do win.
Portadown welcome Coleraine to Shamrock Park. Can they do the trick again? I don't think so.
No, but I think it'll be an awkward enough game for Coleraine. I think 2-1 to Coleraine, but it won't be the prettiest of watches.
I'm intrigued to see how Portadown do against the not a tactically inept football team and manager. But I think that could be a bit of a hiding. I wouldn't be surprised if it's 3, 4, 5 for Coleraine.
I think it'll be 2 or 3, and I think it will be mainly due to the fact that I think Coleraine are going to shoot into an early lead, maybe 2-0 up after 20 minutes. And I think the foot will be off the gas. Portadown, as much as they got the goals there against Linfield, I think they're not totally in the same boat as Carrick, but if they're down a goal or two against Coleraine, I don't know if they've got the people to kind of go back and bite back. But hey, I could have egg on my face, and it could be another shock of the weekend. Swifts against Glenavon. I think I said this earlier on that the Swifts aren't going to lose to the likes of Glenavon, especially at home. So yeah, that's probably what will happen. Might be closer than you think. Might just be a 1-0 here, but I can't see Glenavon making it 2 wins on the bounce.
No, I don't think so. If it was any of the other teams that are sort of in that range, Ballymena, your Carricks, you'd maybe back them to win. But I just think Dungannon will be too strong at home. I'll go 2-1 Dungannon.
Yeah, I've 2-0 Dungannon. I think they're starting to find their feet a wee bit, and that Glenavon result was against Carrick, I suppose.
I can see Glenavon fans getting quite bullish now off the back of that result. But hey, you never know. Yeah, Swifts claiming victory there. And then Glentoran go down to Seaview. I think Crusaders, their week could go from bad to worse. Like, if we're talking about, matchups make fights, on this occasion, I think particularly with Thompson being back in contention for Glentoran, I think he's going to run the show on Saturday.
I think they could absolutely steamroll the Cruise. I think that could be another 3 or 4. I just think, as you say, there's no team more lightweight than the Cruise, and I just think the Glens will play with them.
I'm there with his 3-0 Glentoran. I just think that Crusaders defense is worrying.
I see a situation where like Glentoran are kind of hitting the post, big save, dodgy miss, for sure. And there's a chance with 20 minutes to go, but I think they'll have a majority of the play. And you look at that bench as well of Crusaders. It's thin on the ground. Like there is injuries, bits and places, and both the McCarts are starting, and they're nice players, but I don't know how many other teams they're knocking down the door to start for. And you've got Williamson in the middle, who's very talented, 17-year-old or whatever he is, but he's 17, and starting from the start's difficult. We'll likely come around to this conversation again, but yes, Glenn's to win that. I'll just go 2-0 to be nice. Fellas, we got the dream team back together again. I think we hit all the classic notes. Outrage from Ross, Joe's positivity about Cliftonville, even despite the negativity, and I was my usual snarky, sarcastic self. So, hey, who would want to hear that and see that again, eh?
All the floor fillers. That would be even better if it was like in person in a live venue. I don't know.
Hey, you never know.
Maybe
Halfway through the season, they're only saying like they know this is pretty much how the last one happened, and what a wonderful success it was. Fellas, maybe I'll see you at a game in person this weekend or sometime down the line. But until next time, and the way things go, it won't be too long until the next time. All the best and cheerio.
Thanks for having us, Peter.
Have a good one, Peter.
I think it was worth the wait and all. We got to have Ross, we got to have Joe, we got to have all our usual fun. Glad you were here for the ride. Feels like it's a year until the next time we get to do that. We've got plenty of other special episodes along the way, so please do stick with us. The way to do that is to make sure you're following me on all the social media platforms. They are Kick a Match on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, even that thing called TikTok. Make sure you're subscribed to the podcast. It's free. You know this, whether you're on Spotify or whether you're on Apple Podcasts or something else. If you follow, if you subscribe, it means you get a little notification, a little bump if and when I upload a podcast. The main one being when, because if shouldn't be a problem. I'm here every week. When depends how mad the week is. Last 2 weeks pretty mad. This week, yeah, it's mad, but your boy got it in on time. I think. I hope. Until next week, all the best.